struck me. We're winging it in the wild with only 3 words to tell us where we're going. Thank you, they're all brilliant. Completely different aspects, but there are obviously some very common themes coming through, which are also very common with what Professor Sir Lawrence Freedman was saying at our APG conference, deliberate strategy plus emergent strategy. How do we kind of, work our way through all that? So I'm sure you've got questions for our speakers. You must do.
Hi there, thanks very much. All 3 fascinating talks. I have a question about what 3 words, and I'd like to know how the different governments, for example, in countries like Brazil and emerging countries and developing countries, how have they reacted to your idea? Has there been any dialogue with them about what you've done?
Yes, we've been talking. We've talked to a lot. There's 7 of us, and there's a lot of ground to cover. So it's mixed, and it depends on finding the person in the organisation who goes, this is an absolute game changer. Dubai are putting in a multi-billion-pound system of their own, which is an alphanumeric system, and so we're going to steer clear of chatting to them. But we're talking to Bahraini government, Tanzanian government, as the kind of 2 major ones that we're talking to. But it's a mixture. We've got to find the people. If it's too hard to sell, we step away. If someone goes, this is brilliant, and starts rambling off on what they can do with it, then that's great. But if you know anybody in government, then...
I've got a question for you, actually, which is, whether we're talking about winging it, or we're in the wild, or we've got a completely new sort of language to learn. How do you accommodate that in agencies? You touched on it, Neil, about planning and agencies. You can't really distinguish between the 2. They're interconnected. Because culture is just as important as strategy. From what that's one of my outtakes of what you were talking about. What do agencies need to do, or what have you found has been most successful in agencies to help us experiment and be more emergent?
I've been rereading, trying to reread Creativity Inc.
Oh yeah.
And there's a very good quote in there that talks about how management is not stopping people from failing, it's making sure that people have got a support network to allow them to fail. So I think that's quite a good image. I think we're trying to make sure that people feel like they've got freedom and they're empowered to go and plan in the wild. But then similarly, when things go wrong, they can come and find us.
Do you think you need a separate part of the agency, like labs, to do that, or it should be?
No, I think it should be everyone. Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think, Neil?
So what we do, I showed that kind of big infrastructure chart, and that's kind of 80% of what we do, and then we have a little 20% which is kind of going off the reservation and trying a few things and pinging an email to someone, or trying just a totally radical partnership, because we know that if we work the 80% hard, we can convert people, but we need to do something radical to grow exponentially, and so we're playing the kind of 80-20 rule.
I'd say I think the idea of developing a learning culture is a really interesting idea, and the companies that I see doing it really well, everybody talks about failure, fail fast, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's not about failure. It's actually about learning and creating that kind of constant cycle. And the other thing I'd say is about the value is short-term wins, small wins. And if you're able to kind of hold stuff up as being the way in which you want to work in the future, that actually has loads of value, I think, for driving change across the rest of the organisation. So
that's part of your orientation as an agency, isn't it? Holding up the little milestones
so
people know your direction. Any more questions?
I've got an observation.
Yes, Mary. Yeah.
Just to do with Giles' presentation. This is the perfect screen for you, because it's all divided into grids.
I should have had word, shouldn't I?
I just thought you should I thought it was deliberate, and then I looked over there, and I thought, they haven't got the squares on that one.
Next time, well, I have to do my presentation right here.
It was
Thanks.
fascinating. Thank you very much.
There's one over there, Alice. Oh, sorry.
Triptych of screens.
This one, and then over here after. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, for Giles. If you're looking to help brands with their sustainability and, do-gooder kind of strategy, could they just give money to your organization and say, we're going to map this part of the world, we're going to
Yep.
bring infrastructure?
Yeah, no, exactly. So
The type of tactic you're taking,
Yeah,
which is
we'll
like
take the money.
higher order, let's just tap into
There's-
humanity.
yeah, there's the bigger higher order, improving lives, saving lives. There are 4 billion people in the world that are invisible to the state that they live in. So there's some big numbers there, and we are talking to the likes of Barclays and Unilever and Maersk and DHL around some of the things that they can do from a sustainability point of view. And part of the strategy is trying to get in front of the philanthropists who just go, the world needs this. There you go and address Africa. But we're also, I had a team member in the Congo, and she came back and was like, totally great. It's bigger than Western Europe, and there's absolutely no infrastructure there whatsoever. So we were with the World Bank mapping schools and hospitals and stuff like that. So putting a project together for that, but it just takes time, and there's lots of red tape.
There was a question at the back.
Hey, this relates to the idea of kind of winging it and following your intuition. At the same time, I guess there's kind of a need to collaborate with one another, certainly within the agency that you're working with. Isn't there something of a contradiction if everyone's intuition varies slightly, and yet you're also trying to kind of collaborate and all follow the same course? How can you rectify that, or can you rectify it?
Well, I think strategy remains about persuasion and convincing people to follow you. So you've just got to be the best one at convincing everyone that your intuition is the right one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually agree with that, because I think Ed Catmull actually at Pixar is really good on this, and he talks about how they know they've got a good director. It's not because they're good at telling people what to do. It's because they are very good at that vision piece, and people want to follow what they're talking about and the vision they have for that project. So I think that's a good parallel.
But one of the things they do is sort of peer review work on an ongoing basis, isn't it? So, collaboration isn't just about getting to the solution that is a consensus. It's continually sort of going through it, reviewing it in a peer group, and I think that's one of the interesting things. You've got to get that behaviour going.
One of the things we've just started using is a system called Slack. And if you've seen Slack, it's like a messaging system for, and it's really weird. You end up with these like asynchronous brainstorms, and so someone will put something on, and someone else will contribute and build and build and build and build, and it avoids those kind of traditional brainstorms where the first idea comes out wins, the loudest guy in the room wins, or girl in the room. But it's a really interesting way of working that we're trialing.
Question here, Sarah?
Hey.
I think it's amazing. I just wondered how does it work with multi...
Say the amazing thing to the speaker.
But I was wondering how it works with multi-storey buildings.
It does not. So the way that we're doing that, and in places like the favelas where it's literally over the top, is you just augment it. So it's like flat 1 or floor 2 or whatever. So we haven't done at altitude yet. It's also problematic indoors. We have mapped indoors, but GPS is what it requires to work with. So those are in the product roadmap.
What 3 words have you chosen for your house?
So you can't. So it's all pre-assigned. So it's all pre-assigned. Our office is Index Home Raft. We did have a business. One of the revenue streams was you could buy a shortcut for your 3 words. But it's not a. So I've removed that from the plan because it's not proprietary. We haven't patented it, and everybody else can do it. And 3 words is the
That's
big
the
thing.
proposition. More questions on here?
This maybe sort of veers into the political sphere.
Yeah.
But I wondered if in some of the communities that you're talking about that live in these sort of high-density slums, favelas, whether there's any apprehension about being sort of known and being identifiable to a state that maybe they don't feel
Relate to,
or a government that they don't want to be sort of controlled or connected to.
I think that the haven't come across that yet. I think that the benefits for them in that being able to get microfinance, being able to start a business. I think it's 50% of people who live in in urban centres don't have a street address, and the growth of cities is like exponential, and so they're building cities and expanding cities on an infrastructure that doesn't fundamentally work. And there used to be two key barriers for kind of developing kind of small businesses growing, and that's going to drive the economy forward. It was being unbanked and unconnected, and mobile and M-Pesa have kind of fixed that. But what they did is they leapfrogged the addressing bit, and the reason that we have addresses is because we had a fixed line, and so they're missing one of the fundamental things that allows them to grow as a business or an economy as a person. So hopefully they won't worry about being known.
Cool. Neil, I've got a question for you. Can you be said to have a 21st century strategy if you haven't got an algorithm?
No, algorithm is the strategy. We have an algorithm. There's the connection. Right.
So say that again.
Can you be said to have a 21st century strategy
If you don't
or a
have one?
product or service that is a 21st century
Yeah.
if you haven't got an algorithm?
Yes, I think you can.
Oh, good.
I think you're allowed. but I don't think algorithms are interesting things. I mean, the Fraggle Twitter creation app that you mentioned, I mean, that was my first experience of actually...
Do you want to tell people about that?
Yeah, so it's just a Twitter curation app. So the idea is that you plug it into a list of people. So I believe that there's 3 pillars of content curation. You've got professional curation, so that's human curation. That's people whose job it is to tell you what's good content, like a newspaper editor, something like that. There's algorithmic curation, so that'll be like a search engine giving you content in response to what it thinks you need. And then there's social curation, so you find stuff because your friends think it's good or because lots of other people think it's good. So the theory is if you put those 3 things together, you come up with something interesting. So what Fraggle does is you pre-curate a list of people who share interesting content on Twitter about a vertical of some kind. You develop an algorithm to use various social signals to surface the most shared and liked and so on content from that. And that's the combination of social, algorithmic, and then human curation. And so far so good. We've developed a strategy and advertising list, and it works really, really well. We've got lots of people signed up to it, and more coming every single week. So it seems to be working. And so the interesting thing now is to think about what would that look like in other verticals. But that's an interesting, because it's my first experience of building an algorithm and working with an algorithm. And we've had to make a lot of changes to the algorithm just in response to how people are using Twitter and how that's changing over time. And that's been a really interesting learning, actually, from that whole process. So,
what do you do with promoted tweets? Does that sit within your created content, or do you consider that to be advertising? It's not really content.
Yeah, we don't work. No, we don't take that.
No,
messy advertising stuff.
Yeah.
More questions? Yeah, sorry, one at the front.
Giles,
Hey.
you talked about how you can't buy a shortcut to a given 3 words.
You can buy a shortcut. It's just not something that we're promoting because the investors saw that and went, great, that's a real revenue driver. Let's drive 1 word. And it's a short-term play. So it's much more about us plugging into other people's existing apps like NavMe and drone delivery stuff.
So you can't buy a 3-word shortcut either. So Google couldn't buy Google is awesome, and you couldn't have a shortcut leading to the exact same square from Microsoft saying that Bing is awesome.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But there are some interesting ones out there. Orange Club Biscuit is in Nebraska. So there are some brand names out there, but you cannot buy them.
Does it have to be 3 different words, or can you have orange, orange, orange?
Oh, you can, yeah. You can have 3 of the same. Yeah. So go and find some. There are some properly rude ones as well.
I'm sure you've got all those registered
I was just
already.
filtering and saying, no, I can't.
Any more questions before we close? No? Okay, well, I'd just like to thank our speakers. Terrific. Brilliant on the theme. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Just before you go, just to say that next Noisy Thinking, which can't remember the date, Sarah? Lexi? 14th of April. Still 21st century strategy, because that's the theme that's weaving throughout the activities of the year. But what we want to do is invite, I'm going to say young, young strategists and planners. We're saying sort of under 30? Yeah, we're to come and give us your thoughts, stand up here and give us your thoughts on what you think 21st century strategy is or what it means to you. So if you have a burning desire to come and make your case, then please speak to Sarah Newman, the director of the APG. Send her an email, give her a call. There she is over there. And us oldies can learn something. Okay, thanks very much for coming tonight. Cheers.